Hello everyone and welcome to this latest edition of What Do I Know? In this episode we're going to focus on what has become known as the Handforth Ratepayers Association Independent Parties newsletter controversy. Now you're probably asking how it is a fully registered political party, which is only active really in Handforth as in the parish and the CEC ward, can put out a newsletter and have that embroiled in a controversy. Well, you're going to find out, and you can bet your bottom dollar, you're going to find that rent a mob again struck. But first things first, I'm going to read the part of the newsletter that caused the controversy. It's the first part, which was entitled "Setting the Record Straight," and we put this newsletter out, so you know it. We put it out in November of 2021. We were setting the record straight in regards to what had happened the previous December 2020. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to read to you what was written in this newsletter. To make it perfectly clear, this newsletter was not put out on behalf of an individual councillor or a former councillor. It was put out by the party, for the party, of the party. So in other words, it was a party political publication, not an individual one. And I will say as well, when you will find that not one person wrote this newsletter, 5 people were involved in the writing of it. This first part of the newsletter was written by me. Nobody else. Me, yes. Everybody else looked at it. One or two very minor tweaks, but it was written by me. But I was one of those 5 people. I'll explain that as we go on. We each had a section we wanted to write. There was one where Barry wrote it, which just didn't cause any controversy at all, but this did. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to cut straight in and cut to the chase, and I'm going to read you this first section of this newsletter entitled "Setting the Record Straight," and this is what it says. The infamous illegal meetings of Handforth Parish Council in December 2020 could only have happened at a time when local councils were meeting virtually. Had the council been meeting in its normal way with members physically present, it would have been impossible for any meeting to be conducted as happened on the 10th of December, when rules and the standing orders of the council to ensure proper process and legal decisions were ignored. 3 members of the council, including the chairman and vice chairman, were illegally removed from the meetings, so they could not vote. The only way that any member can be removed from a meeting is by a vote of all members present. This did not occur. Members were just removed by the person whose finger was on the button. How on earth could this situation arise, which resulted in a takeover of the meetings by what might be described as a coup d'etat or a beer hall putsch? These meetings held on 10th December 2020 were to be special meetings of the council, which can be requested to the chairman with the agenda by 2 members of HBC following standing orders. These orders allow the chairman 7 days to consider and normally agree the request. The meeting would then have been held virtually using the official Handforth Parish Council Zoom account under the control of the chairman, who is always, by law, in charge of meetings. No proper request was made to the chairman, and no legally required agenda was provided for his consideration in advance of any public notices. The meetings were just called by Councillor Smith and Moore, and public notices placed in Handforth. The chairman was not given the 7-day notice with an agenda of motions to be discussed, and the meetings were then held using a private Zoom account in the control of a private person, Jackie Weaver, who had no officially elected authority in HBC. The meetings opened with this private person present. No attempt was made to introduce her or to explain her presence. No warning was given that the meeting was being recorded and was likely to be published publicly, which made the video illegal under GDPR. No proposal was moved or seconded or a vote taken to allow her to clerk the meeting, and this was essential before it could continue if she was to clerk the meetings. She just took over the control and interrupted the chairman, which not even a proper clerk is allowed to do. The opinion of a barrister who was formally consulted on the matter has stated, "We find that Jackie Weaver was not acting in an official capacity at these meetings and she did not have the authority to manage the attendance at those meetings." That's not Bevan Britton, by the way. This is another barrister. There are therefore multiple reasons why these meetings and the decisions made were illegal. Why did this happen? The motive seemed to have been to reverse previous council decisions concerning HBC's clerk and to undermine or prevent investigations which were in process on behalf of Handforth residents. The only way this could happen would be to make sure that the official HPZ Zoom account was not used so that a takeover of the meetings and the expulsion of certain members, including both the chairman and vice chairman, could occur so they could not vote. That was the end of that passage. Now, you're probably wondering, what on earth could spark such a controversy? Well, I'm going to tell you. Okay. We received, in January of 2022, a formal complaint against it. And who could have put such a formal complaint in to want to walk all over the Ratepayers Party's rights of freedom of speech, which every registered political party in this country has? I'm going to tell you. None other than Psycho himself, John Smith. Yeah. My first reaction to this when Barry alerted us to it, because he had to bring everybody in. We had to see what was written because we were all witnesses to this. We knew the truth. My first reaction, and I wasn't on my own with this, was that this was a cowardly attack from a coward trying to use the formal complaints process to further silence us. Never going to happen, never going to work, never will work. It was cowardly and it was pathetic. And it cited three accusations. Okay. And his preamble to the accusation, I mean, this is how bright he is. He said that CEC Ward Councillor B. Burkle has published and distributed a document titled Handforth Star. No, Barry didn't publish it. It was the party that published it. So that's the first bit that's wrong. Yeah? And he says this document has a subtitle. No, it doesn't have a subtitle. It's its main title. A newsletter from your Handforth Ratepayers councillors. He's right in saying that that above title may well give the indication that there's more than one author of this document. Well done. That's about the only thing that he managed to get right. He's actually said the footnote to the document also states it was published by the Handforth Ratepayers Association at Councillor Burkle's for what was his former address or his address at the time. Just because that was the registered address of the political party, and by law we have to do that. So quite clearly this is something that Smith did not know, did not understand. He casts doubt as to why this newsletter is there, but states quite clearly he believes there's false accusations and information regarding his behaviour and that of Councillor Susan Moore rubbish. He accuses us of wanting to fabricate the events of what actually happened in December 2020. No, what we're actually doing is undoing the fabrication that Smith and his fellow hoodlums, the mob, I suppose, renter mob, have tried to cast around Handforth as a whole. He makes three accusations. His first accusation, and he quotes here from the newsletter, no proper request was made to the chairman and no legally required agenda was provided for his consideration in advance of any public notices. Well, he gives this response claiming that they acted under Standing Order 6B extraordinary meetings, and he also notes several emails dated 25th of November, 28th of November, 30th of November and 4th of December and 10th of December when the meeting took place. You will notice he hasn't put the years. You should always put the years in full if you are making a complaint, so there can be no confusion. The only email that I actually saw was the one on the 25th of November. I did not see the one on the 28th of November, 30th of November. I had to have the one on 4th of December forwarded to me. So he's claimed there has been all this back to and fro in. of emails and responses? No. His second accusation, he quotes again. And this is the quote from the newsletter. The only way this could happen would be to make sure that the official HBC Zoom account was not used so that a takeover of the meetings and the expulsion of certain members, including both the chairman and vice chair, could occur so they could not vote. He actually accuses, in this complaint, Brian Tolliver of actually altering and changing the HBC Zoom password without informing him or Councillor Moore, saying there was no communication from Brian with regards to this or the emails. And the final third accusation, again he quotes a passage from the newsletter. He says the meetings were then held under a private Zoom account in the control of a private person, Jackie Weaver, who had no elected authority in HBC. Now at this point, I'm going to tell you what he does. He here admits to a breach of the Code of Conduct and admits that both he and Sue Moore, as councillors, approached Schalk. He also claims that Barry, on his own, as a then chair of the HBC Employment Committee, unlawfully suspended the parish clerk. Okay. He has to waffle on then that the removal of the vice chair and chair were manufactured reasons, and that making us unable to vote was not part of some master plan. I've got one response to that. One word: bollocks. Yes, it was. You had to take us out. You had to take all three of us out, because if you didn't, simply put, they knew they weren't going to get anywhere. We would have thwarted them again, and this time the situation would have got a lot worse for them. Because, well, it'd be more than likely we may well have taken the step of suspending the council and voting to place the council in special measures, which would have meant potentially that all the remaining councillors would have had to step back from the duties and Cheshire East move in. That's how bad it could have got. Whether it would have got that far, I don't know. That's all hypothetical now. I don't know, but it could have done. To state that Councillors Moore and Smith didn't know whether the three of us are going to attend is bullshit. You've got to take it that we are going to attend. We're not, with what's happening at the time. You've just called a series of illegal meetings and you've done it again. You think we're going to step back from this one? Absolutely no chance. No chance. He claims here as well that the three councillors were not kicked out by Jackie Weaver. He claims that we disconnected from the meeting. Then what he does is he then completely contradicts himself by saying we were actually placed, me and Barry were placed in a waiting room. So he completely contradicts himself there. Totally and utterly. He claims that we were abusive and that we would have been admitted back into the meetings from the waiting room had we not been abusive. Well, as there was no abuse, again here we're looking at pure invention. It's fantasy. And we all know that John Smith is an expert when it comes to fantasy because of his psychosis that we know, thanks to the famous five and their expertise. That's the kind of person we're dealing with. He then again claims the same happened in the main meeting, that we were moved to a waiting room. Rubbish. Never happened, as you'll see with what myself and Brian say, and Barry completely mirrored that. He also admits to a happening, an occurrence at the start of the meeting, the 21st of January 2021, which they called on 3 days' notice. An Excel on 3 days' notice, by the way, totally illegal. Yes, Barry and I were not present, and I will allude to that later. Brian was present, but who was thinking she could just walk in and clerk it? Again, Jackie Weaver, and she removed Brian. Smith claims that Brian just disconnected himself. It's absolute nonsense. So those are the three accusations that we had to deal with. Well, I'm going to deal with Brian's riposte of that straight away. And this is what Brian attested. He puts it under three headings. Accusation 1. Councillor Smith lists emails sent by Councillor Moore to B. Tolliver concerning requests about HBC meetings in December 2020. Brian says, although these emails were sent, none of them included or attached an agenda or any other proposed list of business to be discussed. They were worded, he says, as requests as to when meetings would be held. They did not constitute a formal requisition for meetings, especially since no agenda was included nor any other description of the business to be discussed. I assert that at no point did Councillors Moore and Smith indicate what agenda they wanted, and thus it was impossible for me as chairman or as acting clerk to advertise these meetings. The agenda did not surface until the 4th of December, when Councillors Moore and Smith announced the meeting to the public. Bear in mind, it's got to be 7 days. That's 6. That's 6 days, not 7, 6. So there's an illegality already there. Not on our behalf, on their behalf. The Local Government Act of 1972 requires that councillors requesting an extraordinary meeting should provide a requisition to the chairman, and that the chairman should agree to this or refuse it within 7 days. It is obvious that the chairman cannot convene a meeting and make its details known to the public as required by law without him knowing the business that is to be discussed, i.e. the agenda. Councillors Moore and Smith did not provide any agenda or list of items they wanted discussing at these meetings. Thus, they failed to properly requisition these meetings. Accusation 2. Councillor Smith says, the chairman, and Brian quotes Councillor Smith here, the chairman had changed the HPC Zoom password without informing the meeting's organisers, Councillors Moore and Smith. There was no communication from the chairman indicating that he had taken note of the emails sent him requesting an extraordinary meeting by Councillors Moore and Smith. Brian asserts this quite simply. He said, I assert that this is wholly untrue. At no time did I have access to the HPC Zoom system or its password. He said, I did respond to the emails on the 30th of November. And Brian finally deals with accusation number 3. He says Councillor Smith describes Jackie Weaver, JW, as a locum clerk. At no point during these meetings was a proposal put to council that she should act as clerk. Even if she had been, she had no authority to choose which councillors should be present or allowed to speak at any particular point. Only the chair of a meeting can choose who speaks at any one point, and councillors can only be excluded from a meeting by a vote of the council after a proposal to do so is put forward by the chair of the meeting. This is clear in both the Local Government Act 1972 and HBC's standing orders. Councillor Smith states, and he quotes here, ex-councillor Tolver disconnected himself from the Zoom meeting. Brian asserts BT was not kicked out by JW. He said BT was not kicked out by JW, he left his own volition. This is what Brian asserts. I assert, and he can prove this, that these statements are untrue, and that at the start of both meetings, the planning meeting and the full council meeting, I was attempting to state that the meetings had been called illegally, but was attempting to put it to a vote of all the councillors present, whether or not they wished to continue with the meeting under those circumstances. However, JW's interventions and interruptions prevented me from ever completing these statements and putting the matter to the vote. Those are Brian's assertions. Now, I did a full witness statement, and I'm going to read you my witness statement to refute this absolute pack of lies. And here's my statement. Paragraph 1. I'm a member of the Handforth electorate and I live on the West Ward. I am also the registered treasurer of the Handforth Ratepayers Association Party, HRAP. Paragraph 2. I make this statement as both a member of the public and as a treasurer of HRAP. I wish to state openly that the Handforth Star was not written by Councillor Burkle. It was written by 5 people working on behalf of the party only after the receipt of critical legal advice giving us clearance to write the newsletter. I hasten to add that the solicitor concerned did so thoroughly evaluate the evidence and advise that it was correct, truthful and could be reported on without reservation. Said legal advice came to a personal cost of £1,000 plus VAT at 20%, so £1,200 in total. If the solicitor had advised not to write the said publication, we would not have written it. The said publication is a political opinion based on factually proven and honest evidence. No part of its contents was manufactured, false or misleading. Therefore, Councillor Smith's claims that they are invented, his pure invention on his behalf, have no merit or base and are risible. Paragraph 3. I make this statement on behalf of and in support of the defence and response entered by Councillor Burkle to the mischievous and underhand formal complaint lodged against him by Councillor John Smith, Chair of Handforth Town Council. 4. I now turn my attention to the contents of the complaint in question and in paragraphs 5 to 23 inclusive, in which I will demonstrate without equivocation that Councillor Smith has, once again, been misleading to the extreme and demonstrated a tendency to invent occurrences which simply have not taken place. Paragraph 5. I now address accusation 1. I have only seen the email sent by Councillor Moore and signed by herself and Councillor Smith dated the 25th of November 2020. I received no such email from Councillor Moore as claimed. That statement is, without doubt, dishonest. This was forwarded to me by ex-Councillor Tolver asking me if this constituted a requisition. As I was materially unsure, I took the option of making contact with our council, as in COUNSEL, as in barrister. I wish to make clear that our council was and still is one of the leading junior councils in the United Kingdom. I provided him with the email, and the instruction from me was to consider and provide advice on whether or not the email could be construed as being an acceptable requisition. Paragraph 8. Paragraph 6, I beg your pardon. Council referred to law and advised thus. To call any council meeting, a notice of the meeting must be placed in at least one prominent place in the parish 3 clear days before the meeting. Under subsection 9 of Schedule 12 Local Government Act 1972, the chairman of a council or a committee, if so requested by 2 councillors, must agree to call an extraordinary meeting, or if he fails to do so, the councillors may themselves call a meeting. However, under subsection 10(2)b, a summons to attend the meeting together with a specification of the business to be discussed at the meeting, the agenda, must be published. This must be done at least 3 clear days before the meeting. Paragraph 7. Council evaluated the email and held that it was not and could not be a lawfully valid requisition. He reached this conclusion on the basis that the email was an inquiry as to whether or not ex-Councillor Tolver was going to call meetings on the 8th of December 2020, as would have been the norm, that being the second Tuesday in the month when HBC meetings were regularly called. However, the clerk to Handforth Parish Council had been suspended from all his duties in November, pending an investigation which had resulted in a disruption of normal meetings. Council also held that he could reasonably and with confidence identify a request for a meeting to be called. He advised that he did not see that, and that he did see that there was a bullying demand to respond within 7 days, or Councillors Moore and Smith would call extraordinary meetings. Therefore, the time from which the requisition should have been given to ex-Councillor Tolver would have been on the expiry of the unreasonable 7-day period afforded to him and not before. This did not happen. Paragraph 8. Council held the view that councillors requesting that the chairman convene the meeting did not make any such request or requisition, and that this email could not be construed to be so. Even if it was held as a requisition, which it legally cannot be, they did not provide the chairman with the agenda, thus meaning he was physically unable to comply with the legal requirement to publish the agenda, as well as the notice calling the meeting. The 2 councillors who asked for the meeting did not provide a requisition or an agenda. Thus the meeting was not called lawfully, and therefore, by operation of the rule and principle of law, this meeting was not officially a legal council meeting. 9. Of further importance is the fact that this legal advice was presented at the HBC meeting of the 12th of January 2021, which Councillor Smith failed to attend, but which was attended by Councillor Moore. This was presented to support the motion to disqualify the meetings of December 2020, November 2020, October 2020 and September 2020, and Councillor Moore did not challenge it. 10. On the basis of the above, Councillor Smith's accusation 1 is wholly refuted as being dishonest and flawed. Paragraph 11. I now turn to accusation 2. The claim by Councillor Smith that ex-Councillor Tolver changed the Zoom account password without informing the meeting organisers, and that there had been no communication from the chairman indicating that he had taken note of the email sent to him requesting an extraordinary meeting, is complete fantasy. Paragraph 12. No such email requesting an extraordinary meeting was sent, let alone received. That is proven by Council's advice above. Ex-Councillor Tolver did not have access to the HBC Zoom system settings nor its password. He was able to use the system but had no way of accessing its settings. This accusation has no foundation and will be confirmed by ex-Councillor Tolver, which it was. Paragraph 13. I conclude with addressing accusation 3. And noting the statements made in said accusation by Councillor Smith, I again assert that they are blatantly untrue and are pure fiction. Paragraph 14. The clerk was not unlawfully suspended. requisition of full counsel dated 27th of August 2020 gave the Employment Committee full authority to act as it did. Full legal advice was taken prior to this act being undertaken, and it was confirmed that it was lawful. Councillor Smith was not party to this and has never ever taken legal advice or bothered to investigate the matter properly. Big point here, if you go and look at the minutes that are now on the Handforth Crown Council website of the 27th of August 2020, you will find that several requisitions have been removed. This was one of those requisitions. Ask yourself why. It's simple. It's to cover up the truth. It's their move to cover up the truth. They know the truth. The problem is there are still copies of the actual minutes that did go on that website before they were unlawfully changed. Okay. Paragraph 15. Secondly, neither Councillor Smith nor Councillor Moore could just contact CHALC, as the decision to become members of CHALC was taken illegally at a meeting called by the clerk after he was suspended in November 2020. Therefore, HBC was not lawfully a member of CHALC. Of further importance, where someone is to be asked to undertake a role within a meeting, for example, clerk, then this must be put to the chair, who can either make a decision him or herself or approach the vice chair and ask for assistance. In the case of our standing orders, at that time, it comes to Brian and myself, chair and vice chair, not one or the other, both. This did not happen. Councillor Smith thought he could just approach CHALC without telling the chair. This he cannot do, as this is, pursuant to Standing Order 23A2, an unauthorised activity in that neither he nor Councillor Moore can issue orders, instructions, directions or enter into any agreement with third parties. CHALC were and are a third party. Therefore, Councillor Smith has hereby admitted that he and his acolytes acted in serious breach of the Code of Conduct, thus meaning this whole accusation is redundant from any meaningful analysis by way of his admission of illegal conduct. Paragraph 16. Jackie Weaver was not interim clerk in any event, as there was no proposal or motion put forward to council in these meetings that she should act as clerk. This is a requirement of the Local Government Act 1972 and Standing Order 23B. Even if she had been so appointed, she had no authority to decide which councillors could and could not speak. Only the chairman has the authority to do that. Only he or she can choose who speaks on any one point. Only the chair has the power to exclude people from meetings, and this can only be done by following Standing Orders 10A and B after the chair has put the matter to a vote. Jackie Weaver had no authority to act as she did, and this is currently under criminal investigation. I'll tell you about that at the end, because that's now completed. 17. The claim that ex-councillor Tolliver disconnected himself and that he left the meeting of the 10th of December 2020 of his own volition is from the realm of complete fantasy. The claim that myself and Councillor Birkle were removed to a waiting room is also fanciful and is pure fiction. We were simply removed from the meeting and we were not placed in any waiting room. Any claim of this nature is pure fiction. Paragraph 18. Councillor's statement that the clerk asked the remaining councillors to vote on whether or not we could return to the meeting also shows that Jackie Weaver acted illegally and that Councillor Smith, Moore and Sampson aided and abetted it. Jackie Weaver was not the clerk and could not advise or instruct the other present councillors to take such a vote. This particular point is also currently under criminal investigation, and it is believed that this could be misconduct in public office, which is a criminal offence triable on indictment only. 19. I can state with accuracy and truth that at the beginning of both meetings on 10th December 2020, Councillor Tolliver attempted to address a concern that he had that both these meetings have not been lawfully called on the basis of the above advice from Council. He so wished to put it to a debate and vote of all councillors there present whether or not either of the meetings should have proceeded under the circumstances presented that night. Jackie Weaver's actions prevented this lawfully correct process to be complete, and in so doing, she illegally disturbed the democratic process and violated the democratic rights of the Handforth electorate. Councillor Smith aided and abetted this. This point also forms part of said criminal investigation. 20. Councillor Smith mentions the extraordinary meeting of the 21st of January 2020. I wish to state that this was also called unlawfully, as it was only advertised 3 days before the meeting, and Brian, as chair, was not approached. I was unable to attend that meeting, but I've been fully advised and appraised with strong evidence that Jackie Weaver was in position unlawfully once again and did so illegally eject ex-councillor Tolver from the meeting. We now have actually the listing from Zoom which shows that that did happen. Okay. Paragraph 21. In view of the admission by Councillor Smith in Accusation 3 that he and his acolytes did so illegally approach Chalk in breach of HBC Standing Order 23, this complaint should be immediately struck out, as such an admission invalidates any complaint. Should such a statement have been located in litigation proceedings, the court would, without reservation, strike out said claim. The same fate should befall this complaint. Paragraph 22. The emails submitted in evidence are of no consequence and clearly show a concerted attempt by Councillor Smith and Moore to bully ex-Councillor Tolver into calling a meeting or meetings. Evidence which shows illegality is inadmissible as supportive evidence and should be, by rule of law, discarded and disallowed. Failure to do so will be a breach of Councillor Birkel's human rights under Article 6 Human Rights Act 1998, right to a fair hearing. Paragraph 23. Councillor Smith's claim that this newsletter has damaged both his and Councillor Moore's election prospects is wholly without merit and is hyperbole. If the merger goes ahead, then they might not have an election to fight. Secondly, given the coverage prior to the publication and delivery of the newsletter, their reputation has been severely maligned by their own malevolence and well-documented failure to adhere to the rule of law. It is well known in Handforth that people are already refusing to vote in local elections. The last two only saw a 16% and 90% turnout respectively, and that the excuse that one took place on the 23rd of December 2021 is not an acceptable argument. These low turnouts are a direct result of the behaviours of Councillor Smith and Moore and their acolytes. Paragraph 24. Councillor Birkel has no case to answer on the basis of the evidence contained within this statement, and this complaint should fall without question. Paragraph 25. I cannot see any point in any of the points of complaint as noted by Councillor Smith having been remotely proved. The complaint is malicious and vexatious. Finally, paragraph 26. I view the complaint as being frivolous and without merit and baseless. I also wholly view this complaint as a poorly thought out and naively consent to prolong a campaign of bullying and harassment. And I sign it off on the 21st of January 2021. Right. Outcome of that complaint, quite clear. Councillor Birkel not guilty. They'd say he might have breached the Code of Conduct, but he didn't. We got it dropped, bashed off into long grass. Now, the final two pieces I want to just quickly draw your attention to in terms of Jackie Weaver and criminal conduct. When you get a chance, go to Section 1 of the Public Meetings Act of 1908. And here's the catch. Do make sure that you read it and understood it, because you'll find that Jackie Weaver did breach the law and did commit a criminal offence because she unlawfully, as a member of the public, because that's what she was, interfered in council business. And for anybody saying, oh, that was on the agenda, it doesn't matter. The chairman has the right to bring that kind of business whenever he or she sees fit. Standing Order 5, and our standing orders allow that, or allowed it at the time. In terms of the other criminal investigations and misconduct in public office, that's still ongoing. And all I can say is, well, I can't say too much on that, but we do believe there is a case for misconduct in public office against 5 persons, and those persons know who they are. With that said, I still think to this day, as do a number of people who saw this complaint and who helped us to defend it and bash it off into the ether and the long grass, that it was a cowardly attack. Interestingly, no other member of the mob made a formal complaint. That letter, that newsletter, went through every letterbox in the parish of Handforth. Everybody got one. We didn't leave any residence, business, whatever, untouched. Everybody got one. So you've got to ask yourself, and then you look at the time frame, it's nearly 3 months. It's nearly 3 months. And then he makes that complaint. We got from Cheshire East that they dealt with that complaint within a week of it being made. So you can't say, oh, I put it in December. Well, you didn't. We know you didn't. And we provided a lot of evidence to Cheshire East showing that, particularly we got from Zoom the rundowns of what happened with the calls. And we could see when somebody was excluded. And I can tell you now, those documents are quite clear. There's no waiting room. There's nothing like that. You've got Planning Environment Committee meeting, 3 straight exclusions. Out. Full council meeting, 3 straight exclusions. So that's 6. And then we get to the 21st of January, called on 3 days' notice, an Excel called on 3 days' notice, which is illegal, because Brian has to know, as he was still the chair. Then he has to have 7 days. Yeah? And if he says, yeah, okay, then we have the meeting. That didn't happen. We sat and had one meeting on the 18th, where we agreed the contract with Avonshire. 3 days later, they were there, rescinding everything. Now, as far as I'm concerned, that was a move by a group of children. A group of naive, immature children. And I'm going to say, they're not even at primary school level. I'd put them at lower nursery school level. And that's serious kids. Yeah? That's seriously childish. But now you can see why this controversy was there. But do you think that stopped us? Yeah. We haven't put a newsletter out since, but that doesn't mean we're not about. We're about. The ratepayers are still around. New leadership, new setup, and it's going to get even bigger and even better before the end of this year. There'll be more out. Very, very soon. And what do I know? I hope you've enjoyed this. Take care. See you soon.